some of our sound devices, and so we've got our chief engineer. Our chief engineer is trying to wrestle with it right now. Anyway, we're in the studio and we're live, and welcome John Stanberry and Franklin Chansey to another big year.
Hooray!
Hooray! Hoorah! And our chief engineer, Daniel Brantley. Just hold it down a little bit, Daniel. We all know it doesn't work. I was looking at an article. I want to bring this up, just kind of start off things this morning. It says commissioners approve a pay scale for holding juveniles from other counties. Okay? Mm-hmm. And we have our juvenile detention center. And what we're doing is we're getting $120 a day for each juvenile detained from other counties. That's Meigs, McMinn, Sequatchie, Polk, and Marion counties. Now, the state rate is $135 or something, $132.38. And the question came up, why don't we get that amount? And they said, well, if we did that, basically, some of these prisoners that they have would be sent to other places, and we wouldn't be able to get that revenue.
We have a juvenile facility that meets the state guidelines for housing juveniles. Many counties do not. That's the first part of it. It's fairly expensive because there are a lot of special rules that apply to juveniles in terms of how much personnel you have, that sort of thing. And so, for as long as I can remember anyway, counties have sent their juvenile offenders to other places to be held till their court dates come up. And these are not typically juveniles who are being held for their punishment. Most of them are being held till their court process is over.
Mm-hmm. I'm just wondering, we bring these people into our county and house them. Mm-hmm. Does that create problems for after the fact? They decide to stay in Bradley County. They continue having issues.
Well, I don't know that they get to see much of Bradley County while they're here. So,
when they get out, they just,
Well, they get sent back to the county where they were for court. So I wouldn't think that's too much of an issue anyway.
I'd rather have a smaller facility and less prisoners, I think. I don't know. What's your opinion, John?
Well, I mean, I'll be honest with you. This political office I hold has 5 counties that I represent. All of them are doing this, and it's for profit, is what.
Well, it is true that, and if you read the article, it's fairly clear. It's almost a market.
Monroe County is building a new justice center, and they're discussing exactly the same thing. If we house X number of state prisoners, or, in this case, in Bradley right now, we're talking about the juveniles, but it's all about how much money can we bring in.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, are we really interested in trying to create?
Well, in our particular case, in fairness, what we did was rework the existing old Justice Center, and that's our juvenile center. So we didn't build a new facility. So we had an old facility that had to have some improvements and modifications for juveniles brought into it, and it is the size that it is. So
we used our tax dollars to fix that facility up, though, am I right?
Well, I think his point is we didn't. Look, it's really tough. I was actually about to say this. This is capitalism, and this is a government, local government, trying to make the most out of the taxpayer dollars. But on the other hand, you do have to back up and look at the big picture and go, is this really what we want counties to be doing, to be in the business of trying to attract prisoners in order to make money?
Their argument would be that but for doing it this way, they would have to come back to the county for more appropriations to meet the standards required to operate the facility.
Well, and there's also the just baseline here is we just did national sentencing reform legislation. Do you want these people in jail or not? Mm-hmm. You can go back to that and say, okay, we're putting too many people in jail. But if someone believes that the sentencing is correct and these people do need to be isolated from society, where are you going to put them?
All right, let me change the subject just a little bit. I was talking to it was a general term, but I was talking to someone in the know, that's all I'm going to say, about our facility here in Bradley County, and we have Now, I'm not talking about juvenile. I'm talking about real prisoners down here. And we're holding a bunch of these prisoners for the state of Tennessee because the state of Tennessee is overcrowded.
Correct.
And can't take them. Now then, they pay us so much a day to keep them, to house them, but we're overcrowded and we don't have a place for them. And it's creating problems for us and it's running our jails down. So, you know, what I suggest we do, because the state of Tennessee, they say they don't have room for them, they can't take them, so we're stuck with them. Why don't we just split them up and send half of them to California and half of them to Chicago and put them in a sanctuary city? Is there any problem with that?
I don't know whether Chicago.
Your comedic timing's a little off.
I have no problem thinking that the mayor of Chicago and San Francisco are pretty much completely crazy, but I doubt that they would take that deal.
Well, we don't have to tell them. We'll just take some school.
Well, here's your major problem with that.
Unload 'em.
Here's your major problem with them taking these people. It's that they're American citizens, and Chicago and Los Angeles wouldn't want to, or San Francisco wouldn't want to do anything for actual U.S. citizens. Now, if they were foreigners, you know, if they were illegal aliens, they probably would take them.
What do you think? You think we ought to take advantage of the sanctuary cities and take all of our prisoners and put in there and, you know, just get rid of them? Wouldn't that be a good thing to do?
I think you should give that a try, Steve.
You think we could? You think we'd hit national TV?
I really believe we would. Yes, I do.
I will say this, though.
What's the difference?
Well, Steve, one of the things about this, though, is the prisoners that are generated in Bradley County, in other words, people that commit crime in Bradley County, and we decide to put them in jail, that costs Bradley County citizens money.
Right.
So the reason the sheriffs do this is because this actually helps, they actually make a profit on these state prisoners, and that helps pay for the incarceration of our local prisoners.
I mean, that's the thing. What we're doing now allows them to say, we're not going to raise your taxes to pay for the upkeep of the facility.
I mean, basically, these state prisoners are subsidizing our local prisoners.
Yeah, whether that's
they're also wearing our local prisons out because maintenance is not.
Well, but to be honest,
maintained.
Almost all of the sheriffs and the county mayors these days, probably for the last 20, 25 years, have built their facilities figuring how many state prisoners they can keep. Now, they're all overcrowded. That's a separate issue.
Well, but it's a little more complicated than that, because what they essentially do with the federal prisoners who are there also is that they have to agree to a certain number
right
at a time. All right, so it is true the facility is overcrowded. Okay,
but you'd have to let local prisoners.
If you got rid of the federal prisoners to allow those local ones to use that space, you would have to pay for it yourself. Your county would have to do it. And they could not do it with the current budget that they have with what's provided by the county. So it's fine. I don't have a disagreement with you, but you got to be willing to pay for it.
Basically, these federal and state prisoners are offsets, and they figure the offset at the start of all of this. Now, I will say, when Lisa was on the county commission, there is some problems with the state prisoners. For example, they don't pay the county until that prisoner is actually, and I may get the exact wrong, but charged or run through. So what they would do is they would arrest them, they would put them in your jail, and then they wouldn't bring them through court for 2 months or 3 months. And the county has to foot the bill for that until they've been charged in court.
What about medical?
Well, that's one of the problems. If you happen to get a state prisoner that had...
Well, the state prisoners, the state has to pay for.
Once
they've been convicted.
Okay.
Pre-conviction, though, they're not, although they're, quote, a state prisoner, they've been arrested by the local authorities here.
So what she felt like they would do is the state would delay the formal court proceedings, because the longer they delayed it, the longer it was before they had to start paying the county. Because they're all chasing money.
It's all about money.
It's always about money.
Why doesn't the state build another prison then?
Well, because, you know, I will tell you things I've told local representatives, it's all our money. You know, it doesn't matter whether it's a local tax or state tax or federal tax, it's all our money.
One of the things that John and I might agree on, I don't know for sure, but we've had this discussion before.
I like that word, agree.
Maybe.
Go ahead.
Let him get it out. Okay.
is that the way we do things on a lot of these issues, we disguise the fact that if we wanted to do them ourselves, we'd have to pony up and pay for them directly, as opposed to indirectly. I
I'm agreeing with you. We as a society on all levels are disguising the cost of things because we would be forced to deal with that.
That's actually true.
Reality.
Okay? This makes it look like, well, we didn't have to raise taxes to pay for all these. Well, you would have to raise taxes to pay for all those if you weren't taking those state prisoners in and getting that revenue that way.
And on top of that, let me just pile on a little bit. For example, on the local level, for years, the city council said, we haven't raised your taxes. Now, they added fee after fee after fee. They doubled and tripled fees, but it was a fee, not a tax.
Where's the beef?
Which is a tax. So, I mean, they do it to us all the time.
Well, I sit here and I look at these things where we're paying on a per diem basis for these prisoners to house them. And, we're making the money because we build a bigger prison.
Right.
Well,
but you did that to help subsidize the capacity
you did it on
needed
purpose
for your
that
local
very
level.
reason.
Yes, they built that planning on it.
The Justice Center we have now is way bigger in terms of ability to house people than the one it replaced.
When I was over in Memphis, I traveled over there for years and dealt with the juvenile court over there a lot. They had their old National Guard Armory downtown. They put a big fencing thing around it, and they had a check-in facility there every weekend. These prisoners had to come check in.
That's the work farm.
The work farm, yeah. And
Shelby Farms.
And they'd put them in there. That's where they had to spend their time over the weekend. That was a good idea.
Well, that's actually what our workhouse is.
Well, I thought that was a good idea over there, but we tore ours down.
Well, ours happened to be right across from where my office is, actually.
Yeah, it used to be there.
But that's what the workhouse is now. These will be people that can keep their jobs. They can continue to earn money so they can pay their fines, and they'll report back on nights or weekends to the workhouse.
Well, I guess the bottom line here is everybody happy with this situation
I
we've
don't
got with
think
our
you
prisoners?
are going to change it.
There's no political will to do it the other way.
All right. Well, we'll move on then.
Because, put it this way, if you push them out, one, you've got probably overcapacity in our local jail, which is inefficient and costs money. And B, the state will have to turn around and build that prison you're talking about, and we'll end up paying for that.
Well, I guess what I see here is whenever you put together a budget, you have maintenance issues that are in the budget. When you don't provide those maintenance, and then the things start getting run down.
Well, we've done that for years.
And then you have to come back up with more money that wasn't appropriated to do the repairs.
Well, there are significant issues at the Justice Center that need to be repaired.
Not just the Justice Center.
Well,
the McDonald School, when they closed McDonald School, somebody was able to get in there and strip out the copper wiring. And because they did that, there was no heat. And nobody fixed it. And so that gym building, which could have been used as a community center for the McDonald area, and of course McDonald wasn't happy they closed the school in the first place, right. But because the heat was off, then the pipes froze and busted, and then it destroyed the building. So we had a taxpayer asset that we let just fall apart.
Well, I don't know who's supposed to be. Somebody needs to get a handle on these type of issues. I think. I don't know. I just can't see us having to go back in and spend millions of dollars on something in repairs when it's been operating with a budget for repairs.
No, I'm going to tell you something. They don't do that. They don't put money back. The schools should be doing that. If you put a heating and air unit on a school, right, there's a useful life of that heating and air.
That's right.
And so every year in your budget, you should put X dollars back so that when that unit dies, you've already got the money back. They don't do that. None of the county governments do that because it's not their money. They don't spend it the way they would have spent their money. They spend it like it's other people's money.
So basically, when something tears up and it's a big cost,
then they got to raise taxes to pay for that because they made no plan for it.
And I said something incorrect a moment ago. I just got corrected here. In fact, we do pay medical for all inmates while they're here.
Yeah, we do. That's
It's
actually
part of the contract.
Yeah, that's one of the worst problems, because if they arrest someone and they put them in the jail and they happen to need a $500 a week medicine, the county taxpayers got to provide that.
So, and we do the state does some strange things that
So
if people are on TennCare and get arrested, their TennCare benefit stops while they're in jail, which transfers that cost
to the county
from the whole state, shared by the state, to the local county.
why are we being so quiet about that?
Well, I don't know that it's quiet. It's
There's
what
not
it is.
much you can do about it. You can.
While they're in custody.
Yes, you're required to. I mean, actually, that's one of your biggest fears, that you end up with a patient that has an astronomical medical need. I mean, you've got cases where counties and cities have been bankrupt by several inmates that had huge medical costs. And then it becomes this juggling act of every entity trying to pass that prisoner off to someone else.
I don't see how we can be responsible for paying these medical costs if they've been transferred here from somewhere else.
Because you can't treat people in cruel and unusual punishment.
So that's in other words, that payment that we get is a per diem to cover
everything.
housing
Everything.
and medical.
Everything.
And you're hoping the vast majority of them can eat a ham sandwich.
So what we're not seeing in these records and these numbers I'm looking at is the total cost of health care that goes along with it.
Well, I mean,
they have a.
So this could be a loser.
This
could be a loser.
It could be, but
a part of the
rarely
staff
is.
there. They have a nurse there who works in the jail.
They have a medical contract.
They have a list of approved medications that they will dispense there. If the patient has special medical needs that aren't covered by that, they may not dispense those medicines to them because of the cost of doing it, but that also may result in the hospitalization for not having those medicines.
And they do try to actually also work with family members and say, look, if they need X or Y, we'll allow you to bring that in. That they do the best they can, but on average, most of these counties don't lose money on these inmates. They make money. Well, it helps pay for the local inmates.
All right, let's change. I was sitting here looking at this TVA lawsuit, landowners lawsuit, heating up between TVA and some of the landowners, where they're wanting to put in a new major power line, and between Meigs County and Tennessee Valley, I guess in Chattanooga. What do they're raising Cain because they say TVA doesn't need this facility, and they're eminent domaining the properties. Your opinions on this?
I don't like eminent domain. I think it's a necessary evil, but I think it's an evil, and it should be used the least amount that it has to.
So if it had to be used to provide
well, that's
power,
the problem. That's the argument.
Well, that's the question, and we were talking about this just a moment ago. It works with TVA too. The question is there a present need, or are they planning for future growth by doing this? And is that the reason for it? Now, I don't know the answer to that. I'm not taking a position on it. I'm just saying we would criticize them if we found out that for 25 years they had known they were going to need something here and they didn't do it. So I don't know the answer.
Now, TVA's, I'll be honest with you, they're rubbing an awful lot of people raw these days. Multi-million-dollar salaries. We want you to cut your usage and be more efficient. And then when you do, they turn around and go, okay, you're too efficient. We're going to charge you more. We're going to raise our rates. There's a lot of people that are not happy with TVA. And we are not the lowest rates in the nation. There are plenty of private, for-profit energy companies that charge lower rates than TVA. It's the whole point of TVA was going to be, we're going to electrify this rural area and we're going to be able to do it cheaper because it's government. They don't do it cheaper.
Well,
now Franklin can see what he thinks about this. The whole eminent domain issue got a lot worse after the Kelo decision, which was, at least in this case, they're going to say, look, this is a power line for the public's good.
Right.
The Kelo decision up in Connecticut, it was, we're going to take property from Citizen A and we're going to give it to Citizen B because Citizen B pays more taxes.
What was that?
Well, actually, it was involved with Trump.
He wanted to build a hotel or something, and
there was one little lady.
There was a property owner who had property on the beach
House.
her beach house.
Okay.
And she didn't want to sell.
And she was the only holdout.
It wasn't, they weren't offering her a fair price for it. She didn't want to sell it. She wanted us to keep
They were
using
offering her plenty of money.
Okay.
And it's not, this really isn't Trump. He was the developer. Yeah. This is the city of.
But the city then said, well, it's a public benefit for this hotel to be built. It will make jobs here. So we're going to, by eminent domain, take this property and turn around and sell it to the developer. And that got upheld.
The Supreme Court upheld it, and a lot of people.
And that's a different way of doing it.
More on the conservative side, but a lot of people were very upset at that decision because it opens up a huge door for. I mean, what I said is exactly correct. Citizen B pays more taxes, so we're going to take land from Citizen A and we're going to give it to Citizen B. Of course, that's what happens when you allow government to grow.
Citizen B was going to help the community of C.
Yeah, but this is a country that was based on private property rights.
Yeah.
And that's incredibly dangerous.
Yeah. Yeah.
But typically when you're talking about eminent domain, you're thinking, well, the government's going to come in and they're going to take this property because we're building something that serves the whole community.
Yeah,
here.
but here's
and it's not for a profit necessarily.
But here's another here's an even grayer area, a golf course.
Right.
The city says, hey, we think the public will enjoy a golf course, so we're going to take Joe's Dairy Farm over here for it.
Right.
I don't like eminent domain, don't like it for much of anything.
Now, we went through it here in Bradley County with the airport.
We did.
Many years.
And that was interesting.
For many years.
Well, it was interesting politically because I was pretty aggressive in opposing that because they were taking the Moore farm and they didn't want to sell the farm. Mm-hmm. And so that, drug on for a long time, and then we kind of settled down for a while, and then we started on the new airport. And I had some of the people out there say, are you going to fight this? And I said, no. Well, why not? You fought the other one. I said, because that was eminent domain. This is a willing buyer and a willing seller. And I'm not going to stick my nose in someone else's business if they want to sell their property.
All right. But eventually, how many years did it take us? We got a new airport.
Well, but you had a willing buyer and a willing seller.
Let's take a call. We're getting a call. Go ahead, caller. You're live.
Hey, this is Wendell Dixon. I'd say hi to my friends there.
Hey, Wendell.
Hey, Wendell.
Yeah, we're going. I agree with you somewhat, TVA, but we got to remember, too, just a word for them, they're there to serve the valley. And they do a whole lot more than just electricity. When the high floods come, who do we depend on? And we're able to use a lot of land that we would not be able to use if TVA wasn't there. So they do a lot of services in the valley other than electricity. So just a little word for TVA,
No,
that's a fair point.
Wendell's absolutely right. And it's not the workers. The workers are wonderful, and they do great work. But the leadership is a little concerning at times.
A little bit overpaid too, aren't they?
No, not the base workers. It's these high up guys.
I said a little bit overpaid, aren't they?
What, you mean like the director?
Yes.
Yeah, like what, $6 or $8 million?
No, 60 million.
60.
That is a fair point that he makes, though, that when we evaluate rates and things like that for TVA, we should take into consideration the fact that they are doing more than just providing power.
Oh, that is true. And that, when I said that early on, that they were put in to electrify a rural area, it wasn't just electrify, it was to open it up. And they do a lot of other things.
It's like vaccinations. We don't have a long enough memory these days for people to remember what happened before we had them. Before TVA, vast parts of this county and surrounding counties were underwater many times a year.
Now, keep in mind, I said I don't like eminent domain, but a power line is probably a pretty legitimate, use for that.
Right.
All right, Wendell, anything else, buddy?
Oh, well, I was just going to say, too, and I agree with you on those salaries, but this is what they say. I mean, you got to understand what a the largest utility in the country, and they say to get the quality people. I mean, that's what they say.
There's an argument there too.
Sure.
Compared to what these people could make if they went from private.
You want that? Yeah.
That's debatable, I know, but.
No, I mean, I don't know what they pay what Duke Energy pays their CEO, but I'm sure it's a lot of money.
Right.
They had one of them that came for one day. They got paid.
Yeah, I mean,
It happens to work, and so y'all have a great day, and I always enjoy hearing you.
All right,
Thank you.
All right, guys.
Oh, well. Anyway, I don't guess we're taking any breaks this morning because our system's not working right?
Well, that's right.
That's right.
I can pretend to have.
Daniel could sing during the break.
Why don't you go get the Bald-Headed Bistro, somebody to come over and talk to us about the specials or
Well,
something.
can you not just freehand a commercial or two, Daniel?
I'm always ready.
Well, I guess you're going to be stuck with us today, audience, instead of commercials. We're going to talk about, how about this Colorado baker back in
The
court?
one that's being basically targeted by the crazy liberals?
Why do we?
Because they're hateful people.
But why does this kind of stuff just keep happening? Why
Because
can't
they
we-
hate him,
But why
and
can't
they
we
haven't
nip it in the butt?
they haven't driven him out of business yet, and that's what they want to do. They're mean, spiteful people.
But I mean, why? How does America just keep letting something like this happen? I mean, he's already been to court. Everything's done. Now
It's a new issue. They found a new thing.
They made up a new issue.
Yes, they know what his religious beliefs are, and he's being targeted. And they're using the mechanisms of government to amplify their targeting. And unfortunately, there are state and federal people that allow the government to be used this way.
For whatever it's worth, the state officials in Colorado actually argued for the case to be dismissed.
Because they lost the first case. They got slapped down on this one.
I understand. The point I'm making is that the judge declined to dismiss the case there, even though the state had requested it in this particular case.
Why do you think the judge declined?
Because he wants to knock this guy.
I can't speculate on that. I'm only telling you that the state of Colorado had sought to dismiss the case filed against the baker.
The original case was horrible. When you read what that commission said to him, I mean, it was just like, you're not a preferred belief structure, and so we're going to just slam the crap out of you.
You know, what happened to free business? You know, if they can't get what they want there, why don't they go to some other baker that'll do it for them?
Well,
I mean, what's the problem? Why do they have to have that baker make that
because
case?
they don't like what he believes, and he's being targeted.
Well, I know what they would say.
Tell me.
They would say it's the same argument for why did this African American have to go to this Woolworth counter? Why couldn't he go somewhere else to get lunch?
Because African Americans don't choose to be African American, and they don't choose to wear some kind of label on their clothes. You know, the point is, a conservative group went to 13 bake shops that were pro LGBTQPSTI and asked if they would do a cake with the scripture verse that condemns homosexuality. Every single one of them refused to do it, and a couple of them physically threw them out of their bake shop. Now, apparently there's not a problem with that, but there's a problem on the other side of the coin, because liberals are intolerant of anybody that don't believe the same thing they do.
Well, let me bring up the wall situation. We heard our president make a speech, a 9-minute speech, quick and to the point. The government shut down right now, waiting on some funding for this. I just want to know what the opinion of both of you are as far as, do we need to stop the immigrants from coming over illegally? Let's talk about that first. Should that be stopped somehow?
Well, I'm going to let John talk first. I'm going to let him say whatever he wants, and then I'll say my piece.
Well, I just want this question talked
I
about
understand,
first.
but I'll let him go first.
Do we need to stop the immigrants from coming in illegally?
Well, look,
Just yes or no?
yes.
What about
absolutely.
you, Franklin?
Sure.
Okay, so we need to stop that from happening. How is the best way to stop that from happening?
Well, I mean, President Obama has a 10-foot wall around his house.
No, he doesn't.
Because he has armed guards who protect him at all times. And
So,
he has a door that locks.
well, Franklin, are you for or against this wall? Or, wait a minute,
Look,
we
I,
call
you
it
do
a
need,
fence.
I will say
Can we
this,
just-
you do
can we
need to quit
just-
saying wall.
The problem
Let's
is,
say fence.
the problem is, let's start with some basic facts,
Okay,
which is part of the reason why this debate gets so screwed up.
okay.
All right. Border crossings right now are at a 45-year low. It's not at a crisis level.
According to whom?
I can tell you,
The federal
Franklin,
government.
I talked to the local DA, and when he started talking about heroin and fentanyl and crack, he said it is a problem because a lot of that it's actually being manufactured in actual industrial-sized plants in Mexico.
Is that a problem that drugs are coming in illegally through the border?
Not in the way the president talked about it. That's the problem with it.
Okay.
No, and here's the reason why. All right. Fentanyl largely comes in from China, not from Mexico.
Okay.
Where does it come in? It comes across the border, though, in
No,
Mexico.
it doesn't come.
It does,
No, let me
Franklin.
finish though. But it's not coming across illegally across the Rio Grande. It's coming through designated ports of entry. If you really want to do something about that, you be there asking for billions of dollars to enhance the security and the interdiction at the actual designated border
Actually,
crossing.
he asked for it for all things, a whole list of things, Franklin.
All right. So yes, is there a heroin issue? Of course there is. But it's not coming across people scurrying across the border. They're coming through actual checkpoints there,
No,
and it's being snuggled over.
It is scurrying across as well. And we know for a fact that the coyotes are actively smuggling terrorists across. Now, there's an argument over the White House numbers that they used, but we know that terrorists are being smuggled
Yes.
across.
Yeah, here's what we know.
They know 5 were.
The president. No, actually, it's 12. Actually,
How many did 9/11, Franklin? 19.
12 in the
19
course
did
of a
9/11.
year. Yes, but that's not the issue, John.
Oh, okay. Well, it
No,
was the
no.
issue to the 3,500 people
No,
that were killed.
the issue for a fiscal conservative like you, John, is where's the best place to spend the money?
Democrats are now worried about
Yeah.
spending money.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
the Democrats have offered
Franklin.
tens of billions of dollars to improve border security.
Franklin. Out of our total budget, how much is this $5 billion contributing?
Nothing.
Let me ask you
How
this
much
question.
is it? No, how much, really and truly, from the Democratic point of view, the $5 billion, they waste money right and left everywhere.
Look, the first-
why
one
not?
of the first-
Why not just move on
What
and
is
let's
$5 billion?
wait. Yeah,
It's
oh,
several hundred border
no, wait a
control
minute.
agents.
No, wait a minute. I voted for the man that's wanting to try to get this done, and there's a lot of people that have. We want support behind him. I feel that there's a problem at the border. I want something done. Why do we have to take on the liberals and the left when we've got somebody trying to straighten this mess up?
How about-
and y'all haven't been behind him
How
since
about
the
if
day he was elected.
How
That's
about
all
if we
this is
how about
about.
if we listen to the experts in the area and we implemented what they think ought to happen?
What experts are you talking
Let me read
about?
you one of the experts, Franklin. The first of these 7 principles is that illegal immigration is wrong, plain and simple. When we use phrases like undocumented workers, we convey a message to the American people that their government is not serious about combating illegal immigration, which the American people overwhelmingly oppose. People who enter the United States without permission are illegal aliens, and illegal aliens should not be treated the same as people who entered the United States.
Illegal.
Hang on. The American people need to know that because of our efforts in Congress, our border is far more secure today than it was when we began debating comprehensive immigration reform in 2005. This includes construction of 630 miles of border fence. You know who said that, Franklin? Chuck Schumer.
Okay.
The guy that looked like something off of South Park last night in his press
First of all,
conference. Nancy Pelosi voted for that.
First of
Barack
all-
Obama voted for
Oh,
that.
here we go. First of all,
Clinton wanted it.
First of all, there are places along the border where it was appropriate to do fencing and so forth.
Okay.
And we have done that. Hold on, let me finish, because this gets so silly.
Yeah, it does.
It
on your
does get
side.
silly. The president got...
Is it a wall or is it a fence? Let's get real,
Whatever
Franklin.
you want to call it. The president got money appropriated for it last year, and guess what? Hadn't spent a dime of it yet. Why didn't he spend the money he's got before he
Let me
comes
ask
back
you a
and asks for
philosophical
more?
question. Nancy Pelosi says the wall is immoral, Franklin. Does that mean she supports tearing down the 300 or 400 miles that have already been built?
No, because
well, no,
what
wait a minute.
she's
If a
saying-
wall is immoral, it's immoral. So why isn't she
John,
supporting tearing
why
it
don't
down?
you get this debate up on a level that,
Well,
that is
Franklin,
worthy of your
President
intellect?
Obama's Border Patrol chief, who was fired by Trump the first day Trump came into office, just this week said he completely supports President Trump and that we need exactly what Trump's asking for. That's Obama's Border Patrol
Well, that would
chief.
tell you something about the level of intelligence of Donald Trump, then, wouldn't it? He just fired somebody who supported
Franklin,
him.
all political appointments are fired the first day. My uncle was a farm
Wait a minute. Let's
loan
get back to
guy
talking
under
about
Bush,
this.
and he
Wait
lost
a
his
minute.
office.
Wait a minute. Let's take a vote right here in this room right now. There's 4 of us in this room. How many in this room would like for this border wall to be put together and support our president right now? How many? Yes. You're 1 of 4. No.
The option is Nancy Pelosi.
Okay.
Or
3 out of 4. I'll take
Well,
it.
then it must be right.
well, all right.
Well, I mean,
No, let me follow that up. 40. Here's the
Wait a
newest polling.
Here we go.
49%
There we go.
mentioned immigration in an open-ended question as one of the top 5 problems they hope the government addressed in 2019. By contrast, only 27% said that December of 2017, a year ago. It's gone from 27% to 49%. Among Democrats, it's gone from 20% to 37%. So even Nancy Pelosi's own people.
Notice that he subtly and cleverly changes the issue, though.
What?
Yes, people want to deal with immigration. That's got nothing to do with the darn wall, which is overwhelmingly opposed by the American people.
I don't
But
think
he
so.
doesn't want to talk about
It
that.
is not, Franklin.
Yeah, it is.
No, it's
It actually
not.
is
No, it's not.
Poll after poll after poll shows it.
Franklin, it's not.
It is.
We don't listen to CNN polls
Franklin,
anymore.
it's
They lie.
it's
That's
about a
fake
straight
news.
split. It's about a straight split on support for the wall.
The last poll I saw was 75% for it.
That's right.
You know, Corporal Singh,
must have been the Fox
Corporal
poll.
Singh, the legal immigrant who came
yeah.
to America, who took voice lessons to try and work on his English accent, which was his 3rd language that he spoke, who was shot by an illegal immigrant who had multiple convictions and gang connections. Corporal Singh probably supported the wall.
Now then, the Democrats are saying that the wall is immoral and unnecessary. Is that the way you feel about it, Franklin?
Largely, yeah, because I think that there's better ways to address the issue that are more effective.
Well, President Obama's guy said the president is right. The president of the National Border Council is right. The wall works. They are right. And it's not based on a personal political ideology. It's based on historical data and facts that we can prove. That's Obama's chief.
Well, I mean, I'm sitting here. They go back in the news and they show where the Democrats are for protecting.
2014, Chuck Schumer appropriated $8 billion for a wall and had no problem with it. Obama used some of it for border. He used some of it for other things. But when Obama asked for a wall, no one pitched a fit, and they gave him $8 billion. One of the first bills that Franklin's crazy Democrats put forward just this past week was to reinstate funding for abortions overseas. So they don't have a problem taking taxpayer dollars and paying for abortions in Europe and Africa, but we can't build a wall to protect American citizens.
The question is, why don't we do the things that are most effective to control the border?
Do we have a president or not?
Do we have a president?
Yes, we
Why
do.
don't you support?
Who's
why
a
don't you-
co-equal branch with the Congress.
Why don't you support?
Oh, guess what?
Why don't you support the president?
Why don't
you support?
because
the
he's
president?
an idiot, Steve.
Now, why do you call
That's
him?
why.
Why do you call
Okay?
him an idiot?
I'll tell you why.
Tell me
Steve.
why you
because
call him
in
an idiot.
December, he told the Congress that he would approve the bill that they passed, and when they passed it, 97-0, he then went, "No, I'm not going to approve it." He's an idiot.
What are you talking about?
They passed a bill to fund this and gave him some border money.
Not enough.
Well, guess what? He didn't spend the money he got last year.
Because
so
he-
why? Why didn't he spend that money?
Because a bunch of liberals have tied it up in
And for
court.
that matter,
They tied it up in court.
Why isn't Mexico paying for it?
They actually
Y'all
are.
said
They
it
have.
was going to.
Under
They
the new
have.
trade agreement,
They have.
they actually are.
They have. They are.
Franklin, let me ask you about this.
Come on.
No,
Can you
don't
people
say
ever
come on.
go-
Don't say come on. I'm not
You-
saying it to you.
you-
Why don't you support our president?
I
We
said-
supported that idiot you put in
It's a
office last
good. It's
time.
a good thing you're not a bass because you be on somebody's wall today.
All right, so Ted Cruz has put forth legislation called the El Chapo Act. And it would reserve any amounts forfeited to the U.S. government as a result of the criminal prosecution of El Chapo, and any of the drug lords, and it would put it towards the law. It's up to about $14 billion.
Why don't we use it?
That's Ted Cruz's idea. Would you allow that, Franklin? Because here's what will happen.
Wow.
Even if we pass that, Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi, because it's Donald Trump, will try and divert that money.
Franklin, the Democrats are just trying to be political, and it's
No,
so
they're
obvious.
not.
No, it is. It's
You-
very
This
obvious.
is
Absolutely.
absurd.
It's just obvious.
No,
that-
no, you
Franklin,
listen.
It's
Last year-
obvious.
last-
It's obvious it's political.
2 years
It's
ago.
just BS. It's political.
6 months
Franklin,
into
you can't
six
tell me on
months
that.
into his presidency, Donald Trump got offered $25 billion for his wall.
Oh, wait a minute. Russia
And turned
did
it down.
Russia offer it to him?
No, the Democrats
the
did.
Russians?
The Democrats
Well, what
did.
if he went to Russia? He could probably got it from
He
them.
probably could have. We found out yesterday, didn't we?
Well, we
What-
found
Yeah, we
out-
did.
What
We
did you
found
find
out that
out
Democratic operatives straight out of the Obama administration ran a false flag operation in Alabama
Oh.
and acted like they were the Russians, Franklin.
Prosecute them! Prosecute them!
Well, my point
Do
is,
it.
it's
I
your
don't
party.
care.
It's your party. Your
your
party
party.
claimed the
No,
Russians,
this is-
and they were the ones doing it.
What we found out yesterday
Russian.
is
Russian.
the Trump campaign manager was sending his polling data to Russia.
So what?
Why would the Russians need the
Well-
Trump campaign polling data?
So they could get it anyway, I guess.
I'll
And
give
then
you-
what happened
I'll give you
after
a
that?
I'll give you a perfect example. Paul Manafort, who you're talking about, who was his campaign manager for all of about 3 months.
Who got credit for
Paul
turning around his
Manafort
campaign?
was
by the way?
probably selling himself, and they looked at him and said, Trump's not going to win. And he said, by God, he is going to win. I'll show you the polling data. I guarantee you that's why he sent that data. And
Sure
but guess
is.
what? That's not illegal. None of this stuff is illegal. Nothing that Mueller has come up with has anything to do with his original charge. Nothing.
Franklin, it's pretty obvious.
It's pretty
No,
obvious.
it's obvious that, wait a minute, let me say this, and
the
I don't
buzzards are
want to
now
argue.
circling.
No, I don't want to argue with you about this, but let me say this: the election was over.
Mm-hmm.
You'll lost.
Who won?
The Democrats won 7 million more votes. Yeah, that's right.
See, they don't
there
even
again,
admit they won.
right. They don't
lost.
believe in the Electoral College. They're actually our crazy ass
I
Cohen
believe
from
in the
Memphis
Electoral College.
introduced
I just am so
legislation
sick
to do
of
away
you guys
with.
acting
Who
like
won the
a majority of Americans support
Who
you
won
when a
the-
majority of Americans oppose you.
Actually, a
Who won the
majority,
election?
as the established election system work, did. Now, popular vote, we don't elect by popular
That's right,
vote.
Steve. But the fact is that in this country, a majority of Americans
So
disagree with almost everything you say. That's a fact.
No.
And you can say,
Hey,
you can
let's
hide
get rid of-
behind the
let's get rid of
Electoral
New
College
York
if you
and
want to,
let's just move
but the
New
fact
York
is
and California
you are
out.
losing the support of the American people.
Wait a minute, let's
If
move-
you think
let's
it's not
move
an
New
issue,
York.
you're crazy.
Well, let's move New York and California out of the system, and let's see who the
We must.
majority of America
How do you
wants to
square?
support.
How do you square the quote I read you from Chuck Schumer with his position last night?
Because the answer to that is, as I said before, and as the Democrats have said, there are places along along the border where you can justify that. The idea of a 2,000 or a 1,200 mile long wall is crazy.
Let me read this to you again. The process includes, this is Chuck Schumer, the process includes construction of 630 miles of border fence.
Which we've already done.
No, we
Have
haven't done
walls
all
worked
that.
other
Yes, we have.
places? Have walls worked other places,
That
Franklin?
create a
In places.
significant barrier to illegal immigration on our southern land border. That's Chuck Schumer when it was President Obama. How do you square that with what he said last
You
night?
can't.
Because
Because it's just hypocrites. It's a
It's
bunch of
not.
hypocrites.
They're hypocrites, and it's based purely on this
It's
president.
a bunch of hypocrites, Franklin, and I hate to see
And
you
by
fall
the
in
way,
that category.
when they appropriated $8 billion in 2014 to Obama, no one tied any strings to it. No one said, we want to tell you how much border fencing you can build and how much you can't. Tell me why didn't they hamstring the Obama administration when they were giving, 35% more than Trump's actually asking for now? Why were there no strings attached to that?
Because he was trying to do something that actually made sense.
You're making no, Franklin. They didn't even tell Obama how to spend it. They gave it to him. But in this president, you're trying to lay this case down. Oh, well, they don't agree with how he
No,
spent it.
what I think, John, is that first of all, if the president thought that when he was campaignning, that should be the priority,
He campaigned on
and that we ought
offense.
to pay for that, he ought to have said that. But he
Campaigned on
didn't.
offense, Franklin. He campaigned on
You're
offense.
starting to act like some of these new politicians
Oh,
y'all
good.
just elected.
Oh,
into-
good.
What was the first Muslim that ever was elected?
No, she's first Muslim woman.
Okay.
The biggest problem for her, outside of her vulgarity, which even the Democrats opposed, was the election night. She wrapped herself in the Palestinian flag. Now, here's a woman that just got elected to be a United States representative of the United States of America and didn't wrap herself in the United States flag, wrapped herself in a foreign flag.
Does that say anything about your party getting too far left?
Which thing is that?
Wrapping yourself after you've been elected
Well, I
in a
don't know
foreign
anything
country
about
flag?
that. So far,
You don't know anything about
You
it?
can pull the picture up. She wrapped the Palestinian flag around her shoulders on election night.
What about what she said about our existing president?
I rather doubt, having seen the speeches of the profanities that the president has spewed out, that he was overly concerned about it. And I doubt anybody else is either.
Oh, I am. What would y'all like to talk about this morning?
Well, this is just one of my typical topics. A new lawsuit. A sorority has been punished for hazing by requiring their members to study 25 hours a week. They had a requirement that their members had to study 25 hours a week, and they were actually punished and I think pushed off campus. That's the University of Virginia. It's a Hispanic sorority. Now think about that. Let that soak in a little bit. So they require 25 hours a week of study.
Maybe they'll.
And that's considered hazing at a university.
Maybe
By
they'll-
God, we wouldn't want our kids to actually study at a university.
Maybe they ought to study baking. Maybe they can make some wedding cakes. and stuff. What else would y'all like to talk about?
Well, we can talk about the 70% tax rate that the rising star Cortez lady wants to impose.
That's another.
Highest tax rate in the world.
It just gets ridiculous to keep talking about some of these things.
Ridiculous.
It is. It's
Frankly,
absolutely ridiculous.
The proposals
look
that
at-
she
here's
and some of them have
there's
put
another
forward.
one of your candidates. Franklin,
Yeah.
is the Democratic Party a liberal party or a Democratic
The
party?
Socialist Party.
Socialist Party.
Oh, okay. All right.
I mean, I'm just.
In other words,
Is she one of those majorities?
She proposed restoring tax rates to what they were when Eisenhower was president.
Actually,
That's
I'm
super
glad you
liberal.
brought that up. Let me give you some of that. Okay. She asked for actually even though the rates were higher, there were so many loopholes. Do you know how many people in 1960 paid that 91% rate that she's referencing?
Not that many.
8.
Okay.
8 people in the entire country.
How did
And
those
when-
8 people do that year? Did they?
I don't know,
Go
frankly. The
bankrupt
vast
or what?
majority of people that did that well didn't pay it because there were all kinds of loopholes and movement out. And frankly, it doesn't really matter. You can't pay for what she's talking about. They're actually talking about going up to 24% of GDP of our yearly budget.
Well,
We're at like 1.5%.
Well, gosh, John,
Franklin.
you only added 10% to it in the last year and a half. You guys are on a record pace.
Hey, John, let me ask a question.
What?
Should the president go ahead and just declare an emergency and let's get this border wall built?
Well,
Or should we play games with the Democrats some more?
President Obama declared 12 states of national emergency when he was in office. The U.S. is currently under 32 active states of national emergency going all the way back to the Carter administration. So it's not unprecedented for him to do that. Now, they'll tie it up in court as soon as he does it.
Those acts of emergency.
Well, actually, some of them were legitimate, some of them were ridiculous. One of them was the influenza pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
Blocking property from certain people in connection with countries in conflict with the United States.
Well, what do you think we need to do about getting our country back in operating order again? These liberals are not going to let our country run as the president's trying to run it. So what do we need to do? I'm going to tell you something. I'm ready to walk to Washington and just start protesting myself. I've never thought about protesting in my life, but we're just dealing with a world full of idiots right now. Just a world full of idiots.
Just answer me a simple question.
What? Would
How
I
much-
vote for Trump again? Yes.
How much border wall has been built during the Trump
It
administration?
doesn't matter.
No, answer the question.
can I-
Do you know the answer?
None, because they're
Zero.
they're
Well,
tied
guess
up in
what?
court,
No,
Franklin.
they're not.
Yes, they're tied up in court.
Can I ask you a question? Why are you so concerned about this? Why don't you just move on? That $5 billion he's wanting right now is not
He doesn't
even.
want
It's not.
$5 billion. He wants $100 billion.
He wants $5 billion this year, Franklin.
That's all.
Yeah.
That's all.
They gave Obama $8 billion in 2014.
So
And he
why-
was offered.
why-
And he
why-
was offered last year $25 billion
With a
and
bunch of-
turned it
With a
down.
bunch of
With-
strings
with a
attached.
bunch of red
No, it wasn't. It
He
was for
turned
the.
back
It was for
around.
the dreamers.
He
the
turned
DACA.
back around and gave an actually better offer than Obama had given on the Dreamers.
All he had
and
to
Chuck
do was
Schumer turned it
take
down.
the DACA deal and get his $25 billion. What did he do? No, the great negotiator said no. First of all, he's a disaster as a negotiator.
No, he's not.
Yeah, he is.
The trade
Guess
agreement-
what? He pulled it. Guess what? The 12 nations we were negotiating with out there in
Wait a minute.
in
The ones that we
Asia,
pay, how much money did we pay him?
just
is
did
that
their,
negotiation
just
fair?
did their own deal without us.
Wait a minute. Should we pay them some more money?
Who are we talking about?
Iran?
I'm not talking about
Well,
Iran.
what happened to Iran? Why did we take them the money?
We gave them their money back.
We shouldn't have.
We didn't give them
Why?
any of our money.
Why? Why did we give them their money?
So that
We
they
got
could
what
buy
we
more
wanted.
rockets to give to Hezbollah to shoot into Israel. By the way, Israel has a fence that works perfectly. After they built their fence, the number of attacks plummeted to almost nothing.
Why don't we let Donald Trump build this fence and see what happens? And then we'll
Well,
criticize.
look, we got a presentation by the police chief and the sheriff yesterday, and I, at the end of it, asked a kind of joking but kind of serious question. They had talked about the jail. I said, do you have in the jail any of these things they call walls, and do you believe they work? Do we have walls in the jail?
Yes, we do.
I mean, you got walls.
Matter
of fact, Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi last night, where did they speak from? They spoke from a building surrounded by walls, surrounded by hardened doors. Why? Why is the Congress and the Capitol of the United States, why is it protected by walls and barriers? If they're immoral, Nancy Pelosi doesn't seem to mind working in behind them. You see, you say okay like that, Franklin. It is
No,
clear.
it's not, John.
It is clear
It's so
this is
stupid.
personality
It's such a
driven on the
stupid
Democrats'
debate.
part.
No,
but
Franklin,
it's personality driven.
It's not. What? $5 billion is nothing, and the Democrats are trying to make
I
it.
am going to quote that every week for the next 10 years to you guys.
I don't
$5
care.
billion is
Look,
nothing.
Franklin, we are in debt up to our eyeballs. And I agree with you. Overall, $5 billion is a lot of money, but in the grand scheme
John
of the
has come in
actual...
here for years and talked about not just the spending, but smart spending. All right? This is the debate we're having.
Wait a minute.
Franklin,
No. If 95% of the drugs we're talking about come in through designated border entry points, shouldn't 95% of our money and our extra spending be going there?
It
It would make more
depends,
sense,
Franklin.
wouldn't it?
No, wait a minute.
wall.
Let's address that for a minute. Let's address that for a minute.
Yeah.
That would make sense if there was some giant hole in the process already at those ports of entry.
Apparently there is.
There isn't, Franklin. We're doing the best we can with it.
With
But
the
it
money
is,
we're spending on it.
Franklin, here's a problem for you. All of these people supported the wall years back.
Yeah.
It
Why
wasn't
did
until
they
this
go?
president
They
came
didn't
into
support
office.
it.
Yes,
They
they
bought
did.
a wall that went all the way across.
He's not asking
Yes,
for
they did.
that. He's
Yes,
already.
he is,
No, he's
John.
not, Franklin. He's already said that. He's more or less said, I was overbroad in the way I said this in the campaign.
Oh.
He said there are areas that need a fence, there are areas that need a wall, and there are areas that don't need anything.
Mm-hmm.
He's already said that, Franklin.
So in other words, he's changed his position. Is that what you're saying?
He wants
Just like
to
he changed
secure
that
the
Mexico
border.
was
Look,
gonna pay
Franklin,
for it.
in a campaign, you speak in broad generalities.
Or just lies is what you're calling
Broad
it.
generalities,
Lies.
Franklin.
Franklin, why can't y'all get over Donald Trump?
Because they hate his guts. They created him.
Because he's a national
created him
disgrace.
as a creation of the liberal left, and when he was on The Apprentice acting the exact same way, they loved him. They didn't mind
They
making millions
did.
of dollars off of him.
They
thought he
did.
was funny. But now
Yes,
they
I thought he
absolutely
was
hate
funny.
his guts.
I thought he was funny. I didn't think he was a particularly successful business person.
Well, neither was Obama. He'd been a state senator and voted present for 186 times. Couldn't even vote yes or no.
You know something that amazed me? The other night I was watching, there was a thing on television. It was about Clinton back during his sex trial.
You mean another amazing businessman?
Yeah.
Never made a dime outside of government?
Anyway, they were talking about his sex trial, and they showed all these, if this was from 1998, and it had all these pictures of all the politicians and stuff around him, and I looked at them, and it's every one of them the same darn people that we're dealing with now.
Absolutely.
Same damn Democrats running around over there with a tie around their neck, acting
We
important.
got to keep in
not doing
mind that
anything.
the party is old and white.
It is.
That's the truth.
Biden is their
That
number
is
one
true.
candidate.
That is
Old
true.
white
Yeah.
guy. They
That
claim to
is
hate
true.
old white people, but they sure do have a lot of them in their top ranks.
I'm telling you, it was amazing to me. I sat there and looked at that, and all these guys are still there. They're just still there. They don't go away.
Yeah, in 1989, there were 16 Democratic women in the United States House and 13 Republicans. In 2019, there are 13 Republican women and 89 Democrats.
So
I don't think it's our party that's got the problem with being old and white.
Okay. Well, tell that when Bernie and Biden are your
Okay.
candidates for president.
I think your party is going towards socialism, and I think no, wait a minute. I think there is a lot of really good hardcore Democrats that are not going to go along with that. Do you agree with me on that one, Franklin?
I don't know what you're talking about. by
Next
socialism.
election, you'll find out. We'll see you next week. Bye bye.
You've been listening to Backfire, another friendly episode where John and Franklin gave each other high fives and agreed on everything. See you next week on Wednesday. Goodbye.
Started silly, but it's true.